Good morning, Bethanites, Bethanyites, Bethanicians. I know, fellow brothers and sisters at Moline Bethany Baptist Church. Yeah, too wordy. I'm going to go with Bethanites. Hello, good morning, Bethanites. Today's devotion, we are going to look at Colossians chapter 1, verses 13 to 18. So we're basically going to pick up where I left off on my last video devotional. So let's go ahead and dig into Colossians. So verse 13. He has delivered us from the domain of darkness and transferred us to the kingdom of his beloved Son, in whom we have redemption, the forgiveness of sins. He is the image of the invisible God, the firstborn of all creation. For by him all things were created in heaven and on earth, visible and invisible, whether thrones or dominions or rulers or authorities. All things were created through him and for him. And he is before all things, and in him all things hold together. And he is the head of the body of the church. He is the beginning, the firstborn from the dead, that in everything he might be preeminent. Okay, well, let's break down what we've just read. So starting with verses 13 to 14. He has delivered us from the domain of darkness and transferred us to the kingdom of his beloved Son, in whom we have redemption, the forgiveness of sins. Now, who is the he that Paul's talking about? Well, we know it's God the Father, since he's referenced in verse 12. So God the Father has delivered us from the domain of darkness and transferred us to the kingdom of his beloved Son. Now, most of you know that I work at a credit union. And when members come in to do transactions, a lot of times they want me to transfer money from one account to the other. For example, they might have a few $100s sitting in their savings account, and they want to transfer to their checking account. Now, the money's not going to transfer on its own. Someone has to do the transfer. Now, once it's done, the funds are no longer in the savings account. They are now in the checking account. So, like those funds, we have been transferred from the domain of darkness to the kingdom of God's Son, Jesus Christ. We are no longer in the domain of darkness. And the perk of being in the kingdom of God's Son is said in verse 14, redemption, the forgiveness of sins. We're not going to get that in the domain of darkness, only in the kingdom of Christ. Okay, let's look at verse 15 to 16. He is the image of the invisible God, the firstborn of all creation. For by him all things were created, in heaven and on earth, visible and invisible. Whether thrones or dominions or rulers or authorities, all things were created through him and for him. So basically, these few verses that we're talking about today is talking about Jesus Christ. If someone wanted to know what God looks like, we can say he looks like Jesus. Because in 15 it starts out, he is the image of the invisible God. He's also the firstborn of all creation. And we'll look into that again in the next couple of verses. Now, verse 16 really makes you think. We all know that God created the heavens and the earth based on Genesis 1:1. In the beginning, God created the heavens and the earth. Now, this verse 16, shows that it was Jesus who created all things. So not only that, but all things were created for him. And let's look at verses 17 to 18. And he is before all things, and in him all things hold together. And he is the head of the body, the church. He's the beginning, the firstborn from the dead, that in everything he might be preeminent. So the part of the verse where it says, in him all things hold together. I want to comment on that because I used to be an Awana leader, and I had a co-leader named Ed Kite, and he taught a lesson on this. And he made a really good point. If you look at our bodies and you look at the physical world around us, it is truly a miracle how everything holds together. I mean, everything. We have gravity. I mean, just the trees, the dirt, the ground. I mean, the buildings, the amazing architecture you can see around, and just the human body. I mean, how our ligaments stay together, the arms, legs, our eyes, it's truly amazing. And based on this verse, it's saying that Jesus is the one that holds all this together. He holds all things together. And in verse 18, it says, he is the firstborn from the dead. It's interesting that Jesus had the conversation with Nicodemus back in the Gospel of John in chapter 3. And he told Nicodemus that one must be born again in order to see the kingdom of God. So with Jesus being the firstborn from the dead, that must mean that Jesus himself was born again. So in reading these verses today, just think about how your life is really all about serving Christ. Everything was created for him. He is our only hope for salvation. So everyone you see this week, keep that in mind. They were created for Jesus, so to speak. Now, whether they believe in him is going to be up to them, but pray for those people you come in contact with. And maybe you'll even get an opportunity to share the gospel with them. And in all you do, remember whose kingdom that you're a part of. God bless.